right. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug. I'm one of the leaders here at the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Group and Yahuwah Almighty and Yahushua Messiah. Today, as usual, we have my brother Jeff, sister Zakiah, the Gibsons, our sister Josie, our brother Joshua, and our brother Dennis. So we're going to be doing a study today called Who is Our Neighbor? So just see here, try to set up my microphone decently here. All right, so or do like this. So we're gonna start with this Google Docs I have right here, and we're gonna kind of just be jumping all across scripture. One thing I am gonna mention is mainly I am using the New Living Translation for this study, and the reason why is because it actually defines our neighbor as our brother or sister in the belief, in the faith. Okay. Almost universally. Okay. And it shows that there's different rules that apply to our fellow Israelites, whether spiritually or physically. So certain laws applied to our brothers and sisters in this walk versus heathen. Okay. So anyway, so I think what I'll do is, for simplicity, I'll be using blueletterbible.org. Let's see, blue, because I can actually use the NLT on there. And let's see here. Okay, I'm clicking on it right now. All right. So we are going to go to, all right, so your, the first thing I would like to do is actually go into the original Hebrew and Greek of this word to show you why they're actually correct in rendering this Hebrew word for fellow Israelite. So let's just start with a random verse like Leviticus 19:18, right? Okay, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against a fellow Israelite, but love your neighbor as yourself. So who's the neighbor that is being referred to here? Because if we remember too, in the original scriptures, there was no quotation marks. So I would read this as it's identifying your neighbor as your fellow Israelite, literally, in Leviticus 19:18 of the NLT. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, children of your people. All right, so they can kind of weasel their way out of that, saying the children of your people is different from your neighbor. Let me see here. Where's neighbor here? Neighbor. Raya, right? H7453. Okay. Ra'ah. Neighbor, friend, another fellow companion, brother, friend, fellow citizen. Obviously, in the context of this would be fellow citizen in Yasharal, Israel, right? Okay. Or fellow commonwealth, right? And I just want to show you guys the Greek actually agrees with this. The Septuagint would actually agree with this concept. Let's go to Leviticus 19:18, the Septuagint. I'll show you guys something here. Pretty interesting. Let's see here. Okay. G4139. So G4139, which is pronounced as plesion. Okay. In the Thayer's lexicon says neighbor, a friend. And right here it says, according to the Judeans, any member of the Hebrew nation and commonwealth, which I would agree. That's what our neighbor is. Oh my goodness. All right, so now we're going to continue here. And now that we have the context of what the Greek is even saying our neighbor is, okay, so we are going to go to continue into this study, all right? So we've established that it means your fellow Israelite, right? So in Deuteronomy 15:3, for example, it's showing that the release of debt in the Jubilee year is only for your fellow brother and sister, not for heathen. And we'll go to that real quick. Okay, so we're going to go to Deuteronomy 15:3 in the NLT. Okay. Okay. Okay, says here, and I'll even start, might as well start in verse 2. This is how it must be done. Everyone must cancel the loans they have made to their fellow Israelites. They must not demand payment from their neighbors or relatives, for Yahuwah's time of release has arrived. Okay, and some people will say, well, neighbor could be my common man. Okay, let's go to verse 3 and test that theory. Okay, let's see if that works out. Just saying anyone that lives next to you would be your neighbor in context. This release from debt, however, applies only to your fellow Israelites, not to the foreigners living among you. So the foreigner living among you cannot be your neighbor. It's impossible. I think this is the context we have to understand. This is a context that we've lost sight of because of indoctrination of Christianity, teaching your fellow man is your neighbor, where in Scripture it doesn't say that. Okay, Deuteronomy 15 verse 7, and we're still reading from the NLT here. But if there are any poor Israelites in your towns, when you arrive in the land Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you, so when you get into the land of Canaan, do not be hardened or tight-fisted toward them. So toward who? Your fellow Israelite. Okay. And this is another translation that actually agrees with the NLT here. And a lot of time we'll translate Israelite instead of just neighbor. Okay, Leviticus chapter 6 Leviticus chapter 6 verse 2 here. Okay. And so let's see. I think I'll go to Bible Gateway. I don't think actually eSword has this translation. I keep forgetting about this. Okay, so it's the Good News Bible. This is actually a Catholic Bible, by the way, anyone that's wondering. Okay. So here we go. It says, an offering is to be made if any of you sin against Yahuwah by refusing to return what another Israelite has left as a deposit, or by stealing something from him, or by cheating him. So this is a specific law that is pertaining to our brothers and sisters in this walk, that are brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah. So this is the reason we're going through these scriptures, is to identify who our neighbor really is. And then so now we're going to go back to Leviticus 19, verse 13 specifically. Okay. All right. So we're going to go to Leviticus 19:13. Okay. And it says, you shall not defraud your neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with you all night until morning. Now, even though I would say this should apply to everyone, Yahuwah is making a distinction here and showing he's given a commandment that's specifically applying to your neighbor, your brother, or your sister. Obviously, scriptures are showing here that the first most important is to make sure you don't defraud your neighbor. Obviously, I doubt Yahuwah would want you to defraud unbeliever, but he's making a specific commandment referring to their brother and sister. So that's Leviticus 19:13. I think we read verse 18 earlier. Yeah, so let's see verse 17 here. Okay, we can go to verse 17. You shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall in any wise rebuke your neighbor. Notice how it goes from do not hate your brother, and then it says you shall rebuke your neighbor. I would say right here in Leviticus 19:17, Yahuwah is identifying your brother and your neighbor as the same person, not suffer sin upon him. Because again, what we got to realize is quotation marks did not exist when the scriptures were first written. It would have been like a full statement. It would have been like one sentence. So you shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall in any wise rebuke your neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. So obviously he's talking about the same person since it's him. I would think that's the same person. So that he's referring to as his brothers, his neighbor. And the NLT, by the way, for Leviticus 19:17 says for your relatives. So the NLT would agree with me there. Okay. All right. So Deuteronomy 17:5. Okay. And right here. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy 17:5. Okay. All right. Then the man or woman who has hold on, 17:5. Huh. Hold on, maybe I went to the wrong one. You shall, hold on, guys, shall not have power to set a foreigner as king. Okay, so my bad. Verse 15. Okay, so I messed up there. That's my bad. All right, so it's actually verse 15, not verse 5. My bad about that. Okay, it says here, if this happens, be sure to select as king the man Yahuwah your Elohim chooses. You must not appoint, you must appoint a fellow Israelite. He may not be a foreigner. So this is referring to us, who we can set king over us and who we cannot. So obviously that would denote we cannot vote for an unbelieving ruler, obviously. Okay. So see here, Deuteronomy 19:18. Okay, so now we're going to be going to Deuteronomy 19:18. Okay. The judges must investigate the case thoroughly if the accuser has brought false charges against his fellow Israelite. Okay. Okay, fellow Israelite. All right. So and if you go to his brothers, so that shows you what his brother is referring to. The NLT rightly translates it as his fellow Israelite. So obviously, this is a commandment that's referring to our brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah, not just so. There's a lot of the Torah that's referring to our neighbor and our brother and our fellow Israelite. So it's very important to understand that. There are differences in the Torah for sojourners and Gentiles sometimes. Like, for example, I don't have it in front of me right now, but if an animal dies of itself, we cannot eat it, but we can give it to a Gentile. That's just one example. Okay. Okay. Deuteronomy 23, verse 19. I'm going to go there now. Deuteronomy 23, 19. Okay. All right. Do not charge interest on the loans you make to a fellow Israelite, whether you loan money or food or anything else. Okay. All right. Deuteronomy 24, verse 7. 24, verse 7. All right. Let's get there real quick. Deuteronomy 24, verse 7. If anyone kidnaps a fellow Israelite and treats him as a slave or sells him, the kidnapper must die. In this way, you will purge the evil from among you. Okay, so again, a fellow Israelite. Now, obviously, as we're going through these commandments, I doubt Yahuwah is saying that we're to treat them differently. We're that it's okay to kidnap heathen. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we have to understand that there are certain things within the Torah that are specific commandments for our fellow brother and sister. That's what I'm trying to say, and that's what this study is about. It is about understanding the context. When we see the English word neighbor, it's not what we've been taught it means. It doesn't mean someone that randomly lives next to you is your neighbor. Or so I think it's very important to understand this concept. And let me see here. I do want to go to the Good Samaritan story because there is an interesting commentary on it on Bible Hub. So I do want to go to this, and I want to go to, let's see here. I want to look for a commentary I was seeing here. All right, that's just that. I was trying to look for the commentary here. Okay, see here. Okay. 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 Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. All right, so let's see here. What I want to read from this pulpit commentary, it says here, and I'll start from the beginning here. It says, in verse 3 of Luke 10. So this is commentary on this verse, talking about the Good Samaritan. Says, and Yahushua answering said, for reply, the master told him and listened by the standards of the parable story we know so well as the Good Samaritan, the parable which has been the consolation of the wanderer and the sufferer, of the outcast and the heretic in every age and century. The story was one of those parables especially loved by Luke and Paul, in which instruction is conveyed not by types but by example. It was very probably a simple recital of a fact that which had happened, meaning this guy believes that the parable Yahushua's teaching here is a real historical thing that actually happened. And at some period in Yahushua's life had come under his own observation. The local scenery, the characters of the story would all lead to the supposition that the parable was spoken in or near Jerusalem. A certain man went down to Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, which stripped him out of his raiment and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. We are not told who the traveler was, whether Judean or Gentile, not a word about his rank, descent, or religion, simply that he was a man, a human being. It seems, however, and mind you, this is a Christian commentator, okay, from the whole tone of the story, most probable that the wounded traveler was a Judean. The way the point I'm trying to bring up here is, again, who is our neighbor? Our brothers and sisters in the walk are our neighbor. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because even a Christian commentator would admit the guy that the Good Samaritan helped out was a Judean. And not to go on too much of a tangent, but if you like research about the Samaritans, who the Samaritans are, no one has really an idea who ethnically they were. Some say they might have even been, some of Ephraimites that somehow would have got back into the land at some point, or some believe that they were just Babylonians that kind of acted like Israelites that came over when the Judeans came back. So either way, the person that is being helped here, according to this commentary, he believes it would have been a Gentile. Not my bad. He believes it wasn't a Gentile, and that it was actually someone who worshiped the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the Samaritans did claim to worship Yahuwah. They kind of had their cake and wanted to eat it too. That's why Yahusha said, he said, you worship what you don't know. Meaning, like, the Samaritan woman and all the Samaritans, they would kind of worship Yahuwah in any way they thought fit. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is, I think even with the Good Samaritan story showing who our neighbor actually really is, that's the point I was trying to bring up. So, I want to thank everyone for joining our fellowship today, joining our study today. My prayer would be that you guys got something out of this, and that you guys maybe this helped you understand more of who our neighbor is, because I think this is important to understand, that it's our fellow brothers and sisters. Yahusha himself said, and if you want, I can look up the scripture right here. He said, whoever does the will of my Father is my brother and sister, right? Okay. And we saw multiple times in Leviticus and Deuteronomy where in the Torah, our brother and our neighbor are actually lumped up in the same verse. It's actually one and the same. Okay, Matthew 12:50. Okay, so Matthew chapter 12, verse 50, Yahusha says, anyone who does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and my sister and my mother. So Yahusha understood this concept. He grew up as a Hebrew Israelite. He understood this concept of it's not so much blood, it's more of who's doing the will of my Father. And really that goes back to being a brother or sister, that are in the belief of Messiah. Those are our neighbor. Those are the ones we need to take care of if they're in a bad way, or if they are in need, if they are poor before a poor unbeliever. And I think that's really what the purpose of this study was, to show the priorities Yahuwah has in his word is for his own, before the unbelieving world. And so I thank you guys for joining me. Have a great rest of the day, and for joining us, actually. I pray that you have a great rest of your day. Shalom. All right.